Jesus. Okay, I think we got it. Thanks everybody for coming to the palate cleansing portion of the Drupal camp. So my name is Arthur Turlock. This is the maybe the alternate title for this talk. So I'm not going to tell you what I do yet because that's part of the question. So this is my business. This is how you can find me if you want to talk. So the most interesting question I get asked multiple times a year, and I know everyone else does, is what do you do? It's a great icebreaker, talking at parties or just meeting people. So it is a great question, and it's a question I've struggled with over the years. So I've been self-employed for 10 years. I've had my own business full time. And the question I often have struggled with over the years, as a self-employed individual running basically a one-man development shop, is what do you do? And so these are some of the questions and terms that I've used over the years and often feel a little unfulfilled by them. Because you say, oh, I'm a freelancer, you're like, okay, how long are you going to be a freelancer for? Because oftentimes that's I'm a freelancer until employed solution. And so it's not really appropriate. If you're not in that scenario, if you are in that scenario, that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just good to be upfront with people you talk to. Potential clients need to know, are you going to be around next week, or am I going to have to find somebody to pick up the project that you started and never finished? Could be a contractor. Contractor can imply I do 3-month stints with somebody else, but that's not what I do. I am a business owner. Sometimes I'm a software engineer. Sometimes I'm a developer. One more, but I'm always a consultant. So I basically present myself as a web development consultant because those are the services I provide, those are the technical services I provide. But in the end, I help businesses to consult. And so I got ahead of myself a little bit. But a consultancy can imply that you're here to help. You're here to help provide services to a business or whoever your end client is. In my cases, small businesses, micro businesses, entrepreneurs, that sort of thing. So, but what we're going to do in this talk a little bit is I'm going to sort of share my experiences, my travels, a little bit of my story, how I got from where I started to where I am now. I'm always interested when I talk to small business owners or consultants, where they got, how they got there. Because I was sort of raised as learn a good trade, be a good worker, work hard, and be a good employee. And there's nothing wrong with that. I found it unfulfilling. So I launched out on my own a number of years ago. And the great thing about being a one-man business is that you get to do a bunch of more things. And some of them you don't like.
Let's say that's a good thing.
And it's not necessarily a good thing. Chuck, you know better than I do. So Chuck's been all of them. Chuck's been a small business owner with employees. He's been a consultant, freelancer, employee, worn every hat possible in that realm. So these are all of the things you have to do as running a business. And probably the biggest reason when people try to launch a one-person business, whether it's a freelancing or a consulting business, whatever you want to call it, is they usually fail here. It's not the technical aspects that you fail at. You fail at all of these. If you can't sell, you're not gonna get business. You have to market yourself. You've got to make sure you can get paid, and you've got to manage the business outdoor a lot of hats. And then there are probably about 40 other hats here that we're not talking about, but those are the big ones. And so this is important to running a business. It's actually the core of your business. The services you provide are somewhat secondary. So just a little bit about my story, how I ended up here. So there's the education component in really small letters, sorry, of my, basically what would be my resume. Now, hidden in here are no business classes, one single computer science class in my undergraduate degree. So maybe I should clarify. So I'm a web consultant. I build primarily custom web apps. I do some sort of freelancing consulting work for other businesses, but primarily I have small business clients that I deal with directly. So I don't have employees. I hire contractors as necessary to fill the roles that I can't. But I went from basically a career track in science to now being a web developer. Effectively, when you break it all down, that's what I do. And so as I moved through my training and early science career, I realized that I was unfulfilled and the career track I was on was not going to work. For some of that was self-discovery. I realized that I'm not a really good employee. I like to have a little more control that you often have as within a business and the direction of that business. So the one thing you get by running your own business, being a one-man show, or having employees, is that you at least get to direct where you're going. And personally, flexibility was the big thing for me. I bristle a little bit when somebody says, well, you need to be at work from 8 to 5. I'm like, well, especially when the job that doesn't require work at 8 to 5. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of my own personal, maybe strengths, shortcomings, and challenges. But an important thing about when you're working for yourself, whether that is owning a business with employees or being a one-man band, got to know a little bit about yourself. You need to know a lot about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, where your blind corners are. That's an important aspect of it too. So, by the way, ask questions, stop me, let's talk about things if you're curious. So, along the way of my science training career and early career, basically 10 years of work in postgraduate training in science, realized that I wasn't going to be very effective in this field. So a friend, in a lead up to the .com boom and bust, a friend of mine had said, hey, do you want to learn some web programming? I've got some work. He was a one-man web consultant at the time. So I was like, sure, this sounds fun, interesting. I'd always sort of been a little bit of a geek and interested in computers, but not in a highly technical capacity. So through some on-the-job training, he basically helped me learn. Now that was a lot of self-learning too, books, tutorials. We all know how it goes. We all learn, and we have to learn how to learn as we go through our careers. The stuff you knew 10 years ago in this field is almost useless now. So we're all relearning. So that helped. It helps to have those skills. And as I went and learned this process, in the early days, we didn't have Drupal. We didn't have, this was HTML and hard-coded PHP and I don't even know if CSS existed in 1999. But point being is that we learn with the tools we have. And then as I went along, there were no, the sort of .com came and went, and I got to see that from the sidelines. And then went to graduate school. After leaving graduate school and starting to flame out on science, I went back to the web development because it was interesting. It was a challenge. without really thinking about at that time how to transition and really being interested in transitioning to a new career. But as that transition, as my old career started to hold less appeal, I realized that I needed a new one, and this other aspect of work was really interesting. And it had a lot of the components that were interesting to me. So flexibility, control of my destiny, options that I didn't have in the other career. So I moved that way, and I decided this is an important component if you're ever thinking of making that switch, is to find something that is, you have to commit to the process. Because if you think you're not going to commit, you can always fall back. And maybe that's okay. And depending on your lifestyle and your needs, maybe you have 4 or 5 mouths to feed. So maybe jumping in with both feet is maybe a little bit of a challenge. I'm always curious. I want to hear your story sometime about that. But I didn't have any mouths to feed, so I was fortunate. And no dependence, I should say. So it made that commitment a little bit easier. But at the same time, I was leaving a career that was very comfortable, well, not comfortable, but leaving a career I was familiar with and moving forward. So at some point I had to quit my day job, and all of the people I worked with were befuddled, dumbfounded, and expecting to see me again. And so, but I'd already done the work to be able to launch, and I can talk about that a little bit more. So, in 2006, I was able to quit my day job and move forward with a new career. And so the question I had, and a lot of people have, is how do you get started? You've got a great full-time job, but you want to be over there. So how do you make the transition without setting off booby traps? So I was doing some moonlighting and all this little mini subcontract work for my mentor, who again ran a business, and so I had opportunities. Now, in retrospect, I didn't have the opportunities of being in the field full time and having a lot of contacts. So maybe some ways that was ignorance is bliss kind of thing, but it also sets up for a bit of a challenge. So the first thing is the 7 Ps. And if I can remember it, it's going to be, if I can't remember, it's going to be ironic. So proper prior planning precedes perfect performance. Something like that. Prevents piss poor performance, I think, is the actual phrasing. But thankfully, we're not stealing in advance. But the question still remains: how do we get there? How do you get there? What's in the question mark, right? And so, instead of being discrete phases, hopefully you can figure out a way to dovetail these solutions. So, with the same idea, if you don't have a plan, you've got a goal, you know where you want to be. But if you don't have a plan to get there, you're just swimming with no life reserve. So, first of all, before we get into the technical details, actually we're not even going to talk about technical details, but you've got to get everything in place. To run a business, you have to have some things in place. Whatever those are, meaning get a business structure, a name. If you want to run as your own name, you're going to be seen as a freelancer. People aren't going to see you as a legitimate business. That's okay, he's moonlighting, he's going to work for a while, and that's okay if that's what you're trying to put forward. But if you're trying to put forward, I'm a standalone business, and I'm going to be here for the long haul, and I'm committed. Clients that are looking for that will gravitate towards you. So,
I would add one thing on that.
Please.
When you're naming your business, make sure you actually speak to your, let's say, wife or spouse about what you're going to name your business.
Oh, yeah.
I named my business Web Chuck, And she said, you did what? That's not professional. You did what?
When I was preparing this talk, I thought of you, Chuck, actually. So think about something that has some lasting power and is a little professional, more sounding than what. Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Well, it's hard to transition it too. I mean, I've transitioned names of business a couple of times.
Yes.
So, yeah, that being thoughtful about it up front is important, but it's not impossible to transition.
Because you're building a brand
Right.
around that business. The
That's
important thing that we haven't discussed is you're building a brand. Whether you're building whatever you're doing, whatever service you're selling, you are eventually building a brand. And if that brand is associated with Chuck Crandall, that's fine, but it's going to have limitations. And as Matt mentioned, transitioning a name, which means transitioning a brand. People are like, well, what happened to that? Did the company get sold? Did it get absorbed by somebody else? There's often questions that you have to address that you.
Right. But it also becomes a sales and marketing opportunity if you have a client base too. So
right.
There are positives to it
as
well. But yeah, I mean, it is about the brand and having a vision for that brand.
Right.
That's important.
Yeah. So think about that. Pass it around. Make sure it passes the partner wife sniff test. And
wasn't this the decade of silly company names though? I use MailChimp a lot. And every time I tell a customer or a client, you get an email service is on MailChimp, it's like, just the name sounds on so many levels.
Bad. You know who I use for my domain name registrations? Namecheap. It sounds terrible, right? It is like, wow, what kind of fly-by-night company is that? But right. All the good ones are taken, right? So we're digging at this point. But really, it doesn't matter as long as you can, as long as you have a brand that you can start building, and then get the business structure in place. Whether you're going to run it as self-proprietorship, LLC, or a corporation, S corp, C corp. Find out what those are, learn them, get professional assistance if you need to get those set up, but do it right. Get a business license. All these things take mental energy. They don't take a lot of time. Well, they can take time, but they don't necessarily cost a lot of money. And then just some of those basic operational tools that skimming here with saying accounting, invoicing, and time tracking. Because as a consultant, you're primarily selling your time, or that's a major component of what you're selling. So make sure you keep track of that. Again, I come from this I'm 90% of my business is selling time. So you have to keep track of that and make sure you can build and get paid. Oh, and the other thing also is a one-man band. It's always easy to try to fly under the radar and go cheap, but good tools are worth every penny. Find the tools that you need and that work for you. And when I started out, I was writing invoices on MS Word, but by the time I went full-time, I had to get better tools. And that included QuickBooks, and there's probably a gazillion other better solutions out there now. But at the time, I needed to take credit cards because I was offering hosting. And so that was the solution. And so let people pay and make it easy for people to pay. Take PayPal, take credit cards, take whatever, make it easy for people to pay is just an aside on that. So there's more to this, and you can read a million books. One of the great things about learning some of those things, especially about your business structure and licensing and some of those things. If you're a do-it-yourself kind of person, NOLO Publishing is a great sort of offering do-it-yourself legal advice. And at least if you don't set the things up yourself, you have to at least educate yourself on what the options are. So they published a bunch of books. You can find them online. Highly recommend it. So the next thing that I want to talk about is always a challenge, right? And especially when you're trying to transition from I'm an employee and now I want to go out on my own. How do I get clients, right? Is because you probably can't take your clients, can't pick them up from your old job and carry them over. So, and this was especially challenging for me. I wasn't in the field at the time. So But I did have other opportunities because as never being an employee, I was always seen by my few couple contacts as kind of a subcontractor. And so if you're already working as a developer or in whatever field, I use the term developer, but whatever services you provide, you might already have some moonlighting clients, right? I know as a developer, you've got moonlighting clients because people will always come to you with small projects that they can't afford or don't want to go to an agency to solve. And so if you can turn those moonlighting projects into, using the term sunlight here, turn them into day projects. So maybe you have a client who can grow, is ready to grow, and maybe you can help. You can be part of that solution and help grow with them. You can grow as well as them. So in my particular scenario, I had been doing a little bit of work on the side with my full-time job, and I got a couple small clients. One of them was a local digital agency, ad agency. They had lost somebody in their development work. I happened to be friends through a wife, a graduate student's husband or something like that, who worked for that agency. And he was still there or he had just left. It doesn't matter. But they were looking for some help. So it's just like everything else. Somebody in your network has referenced you or given you a lead. And so I was able to do a small amount of work for them. So this is sort of some moonlighting work I was doing. But in this scenario, right, you just need a few of those clients to you're trying to achieve escape velocity here. So that's the idea. So had a little bit of that. My old mentor had spun off a startup company from the U with another individual, and they were working on building that up. And again, it was pretty lean. They were needing some assistance. So between a couple of these gigs, I was just barely able to get out the door. I had enough commitment when I was ready to launch. 10 hours a week here, 20 hours a month commitment for at least a few months that I could see to be confident enough. And whatever runway you need, maybe that's if you've got 5 mouths to feed, you need a longer runway or you need more savings. But point being, especially when getting started, there are some of these options that you can use. And again, the subcontracting thing, as I mentioned, I was working for an ad agency. And maybe you can cut contracts for your old employer. Chances are they don't really want to lose you in your mental space, and your experience. So maybe there's that. So you glue a couple of these things together and you can achieve escape velocity. So, and the other thing you're going to have to do is network, and more networking, and more networking, and more networking. And that's just simply talking to people and having the opportunity, telling people what you do, asking them what they do. It's sort of a nebulous term, and there's all sorts of different ways to do it. And it was one of the things I was most terrified and had the hardest thing to do. Because when you're an employee, oftentimes you have a title, and you get to say, what do you do? Oh, I'm the senior developer for blah, blah, blah. And that's easy. But now, if you're also out there talking, and Matt definitely can attest to this, you're out there talking, you're having to sell yourself a little bit, but not too much, and you want to ask questions about what that person does, and you're still trying to find a common ground whenever you're talking to people. Networking is nothing more than building relationships. So just ask people what they're interested in, what they do, and they will probably ask you the same thing, and so you get to tell them. So have that elevator pitch ready. Don't make it sound like an elevator pitch. Sometimes you want a real elevator pitch, but you don't always use it. You have to know when to use it and not to use it. So those are things you'll get to learn along the way. And then the question becomes always, what are you selling? You might sell any one of these in the capacity that we're in. But I sell some of these services. I personally do some of these services. I don't do some of these services. When I don't do some of these services, I make sure I have a solution for the person that came to me, whether that is hiring a contractor to to handle the work in-house or to pass it off to somebody else in my professional network. I don't do front-end design, and I don't do front-end layout. And I do a little bit of WordPress, about this much. But I definitely don't do sort of new site building and layout, that kind of stuff. But I know how people that do, and I've built that network over the years. And while you're out there building a network of, this is the talk about 12 years ago that I would hate to hear, because the term network came up about 50 times. But it's the thing you can learn how to do, and you have to learn how to do. Anyway, I digress. So, and I lost my train of thought. So the important thing is to have a professional network and have a personal network. And some of that professional network are those other individuals that you work with and that have complementary skills. And so when I don't offer those, I make sure I can help provide a service to that person, potential client that I came from. But what you are really selling at the end of the day is return on investment to a potential client. Because if you can't offer a good return on investment, which is the terms they are thinking in, then you are going to have a very short-lived client relationship. And when you're talking with clients, the most important thing, maybe not the most important thing, but the component you will always not fail when thinking about and referring to, when you're talking about all those other technical services that you might offer, is return on investment. Because if a client comes to me, here's a pretty common experience in my day-to-day work. I'll have an existing client, maybe a new client, and they've got an idea. A lot of times I build maybe new products for entrepreneurs, new solutions. And everybody wants the world, right? You want all these dongles and switches and features. And so, but the thing that you can often talk about and helps prioritize, and your job as a consultant is often helping a client prioritize what they need based on their ideas. You're helping coalesce those into solutions. And so if you can start thinking about those things in return on investment, it helps stratify and helps prioritize those ideas. So if you go into meetings and go into technical talks, and whether it's discovery or again new features that you want to discuss, if you're thinking about that and you use the terminology of the project owner, of the business owner, they will appreciate that. So that took me a long time to learn, by the way. And so got a little low on the font. So moving past those ideas of what you're actually selling, if you're going to launch and you're going to try to launch from self-employment, from a classical employment to running your own business, the thing you're going to have is personal support. You're going to have to run your business name by your wife to make sure she approves. And you're going to have to, sorry, Chuck, that's gold, man. But make sure she or he are going to support you. Because if not, there are going to be bumps along the road, and there's going to be challenges, and you're going to have somebody to vent to sometimes over the dinner table. And if they're not supporting you, it's going to be a much rougher road. And so these are just a couple points. And also you're going to have to build, in addition to building that, just a network of potential clients and people that could potentially turn into future clients. Whether that's in a vertical market or the people you run into along the street. In addition to all of that, you have to build that professional network, as I mentioned. And this was one of the hardest things for me, not starting in the field to begin with, and having employment and sort of building those relationships over 5-10 years. It was a challenge for me. So you had to kind of go out and often find those other those other small businesses, one-man businesses, freelancers, consultants. And it's just the same thing. You're going to build those relationships over time, and going to things like this, being part of the bigger community of whatever that community is, will help in the long run. It helps your business, and it helps you maintain some sanity. It gives you people to talk to and learn from. Really, is a huge component of that. So, all that aside, you got to have goals. You got to be able to, launch a business. But probably one of the things, if I could boil down to the one skill that I learned, that I started out. When I started out, I did not have much confidence, and I didn't have a whole lot of understanding of what was really required. You often focus on, I can write the best, I can build the best site, I can do the best design, I can do whatever technical skill it is you're providing. That's important. You have to be able to provide a good service if you're going to survive. I think everybody probably is familiar with most small businesses fail in the first 5 years. 95% or so of businesses fail in the first 5, the remaining 95% fail in the following 5. So it's easy to get out the door. It's hard to attain cruising altitude. So the one skill, and hopefully the one thing, if you can take away from this talk, is the most important thing I found in 10 years of doing this. This is the skill that you really need. It's the most important skill. Everything else is secondary to that. If you can't communicate with your client, you're not going to be able to provide a solution. So if you have a great example, and this, again, something I deal with every day, is writing custom software, but it applies to any sort of project, whether you're doing marketing sites or financial sites or whatever. If you fail to communicate with a person, you're going to provide a poor product. Especially with custom software. So oftentimes, here's my example. I'll be talking with a client, whether it's new or existing, and you're trying to hash out what it is we're creating. What solution are we providing? And so it's easy to talk about an idea and wave hands, but when it really comes down to it, you got to put those ideas into reality. And so most business owners aren't technical, and so they talk in different language that we, maybe as developers or technical people, utilize. So the important thing is to be able to utilize both groups of vocabulary and both ways to communicate. This is a learned skill, by the way. This isn't something that you're born with. I'm a natural introvert. What?
Or I would add to that, a lot of times your clients don't want to talk to you. They have other stuff they're worried about, they want to focus on, and you have to push the fact that we need a scheduled phone call. We need, a weekly or bi-weekly or whatever it is.
Yes.
And whether they like it or not.
That's a good point. And that's how projects die. It, by the way, is oftentimes, if it's hard to push, it's hard to lead from the rear. That's a very challenging point right there. And sometimes you got to push your clients or drag them a little bit to the finish line. So, or that's where projects go to die, when interest is waned and they've got, remember, your business owner's got 150 things on their plate, you're just one of them. So if you're lucky, you've got maybe an internal project manager or product owner to do something with that. One of my most successful projects in the last 2 years, I had a great product owner and product manager, internal, who I'd also been friends with for several years. So that made the communication a lot easier, and the rapport had been built. But she was also a taskmaster. So she took care of her internal people, making sure that things got done. And I didn't have to pull teeth but I've had projects like that, and that's how most of the projects that have died, that's usually what.
Yeah.
So it's suddenly disinterest by the product owner. So one little example of how this really plays out. And again, this is something that's taken me a number of years to really appreciate. Is that when I'm going to talk to somebody about a new product, and we're just trying to hash out like, oh yeah, the customer needs to do X, Y, and Z, or they basically give you the user story. And so you're like, okay, well, when you get down into the nuts and bolts of it, how does that workflow happen? And they're going to describe to you what they think it should be. And if you're building it in that format, first of all, you're going to ask to return that same statement in a question. So what I'm hearing is that you're going to repeat it back to them as you understand it, and then you're going to keep doing that until you meet. And if you're not doing that, you're going to go boom, and you're going to build something that they don't want, and they're going to be upset, and you're going to spend more money. Reduce the ROI for them, and you're gonna have bumps in the project, more problems, and you probably have challenges. But the good thing is that you can learn from those. Again, a learned skill that you get every opportunity to practice with every single interaction. So it really all boils down to that. But
so it's aliens.
It's aliens. Yeah, I should have mentioned I just got a bunch of stupid memes in here. It's really good to talk. So if you've ever been in a meeting and you've spewed a bunch of gobbledygook and you get this response, you have some work to do. So, but the good thing is you'll probably have another meeting with whether it's a client or a team member. So my obligatory foulness. There you go. So, as I mentioned, you get lots of opportunities to learn. These are a couple little tidbits from the rules for being human picked up along the way. So they apply in life, they apply in business. No mistakes, only lessons. Lessons are going to be repeated until they're learned. They're going to be presented in different ways, but essentially they're going to be repeated. And if you can't learn from your lessons, can't learn from your mistakes, the lessons get harder and bigger. And so, again, like I mentioned, a lot of these things are learned, and experience means you've built upon your mistakes and learned from them. And if you haven't, you're just going to keep repeating level 1 the whole time. So if you can build upon that, and like I said, my communication skills were terrible. I was terrified to talk to people. I was terrified to sell. And it's gotten easier because I've learned that, you have to have at least a little bit of ability to talk to people and maybe read some faces when they're not interested in talking to you anymore. Scale it back. Part of this was also when you're talking to somebody and maybe you're trying to do a sales pitch or you're talking about something technical, you get the glaze over the face. So when I was especially in graduate school, people would ask me what I was working on. You kind of had to gauge where their level of skill and interest was. If you just launch into the minutia of what you do, you just lost them. But if you start at the high level and then slowly work down to where, to make sure that you encapsulate their understanding, and then you can drill down to what their interest is and the experiences, and you can hone in on that faster. So, but anyway, that's a little bit of a digression. But keep these in mind as you go through. You're going to have to learn. These are just life lessons, but they are critically important if the business is going to succeed. Whether you're a one man or you hear any of, or you read any successful businessmen and entrepreneurs, you're going to get these same conceptual lessons out of that. So a couple of the other things that I've learned along the way: make hay when the sun shines. As a one man business, there's always too much work or not enough. And there's never the magic amount, right, Chuck?
That's what I was hoping to get out of this.
Yeah. Just some quippy sayings is really.
No.
The answer.
The answer to the perfect level of work.
No. When you figure it out, bottle it and sell it. So part of the reason I like having the structure of business and work is that I like flexibility in life. I like to take trips, I like to go skiing, mountain bike, I like to visit my family. I like to also like to work hard, and I'm okay with that. And the important thing is when there's work, it'll all come in at one bloody time. And so, you've got to know that there will be lean times and there will be good times. And when it's a good time, make hay. I had the benefit over the years. I saw the .com bust very much from the sidelines, not even in the same career, but I just could watch it a little bit. And you had a lot of the freelancers until employed, out there, and I ended up capturing some of their work and dealing with the mess for years. That's another story. So, important thing, when it's busy, there will be boom and bust times. The Great Recession was really challenging, but took work that I didn't want to. I sort of explored a couple different options of moving my business and my services in that direction. But in some ways, Drupal saved me, by the way, the requisite mention of Drupal. So actually, part of that was I moved to using Drupal at that time in the Great Recession, and that was actually helped my business a lot. So make hay when it shines. Work, knowing that it's going to be a slow time. It used to be maybe you've got clients whose budget year is July to June. Well,
No problem.
May is going to be really dry. May and June are going to be really dry. The minute kids are out of school, the phone stops ringing. The minute last week in August, every year, pretty much like clockwork, my phone rings. New projects, even with existing clients. So, and it's just the natural cycle of life. There is a business cycle. Appreciate that it exists. Whether you like it or not, surf the wave when it's there. So.
I would add to that too, that I think, an important thing is to diversify your work portfolio and try to, I guess what I mean by diversify is, have pet projects.
Yep.
That are your own things. Your consultancy is another piece. And I guess retainers and hosting or whatever.
Yep.
You would do.
That is
kind of falls under the consultancy, but you've got to create recurring revenue for your own business so you can weather those.
You basically just stole it.
Sorry. Oh.
That's all right. Matt and I worked together for a long time,
Yes.
so in fact, his company I do some subcontracting with. So it's pretty much the only subcontracting I do, by the way. So this is the flip side of make hay when the sun shines. Is my favorite quote by Warren Buffett. Is that if you don't have good reserves, whether that is diversifying, it's critical to diversify your business. If you've got 2 clients, because you like subcontracting, you're like, I like working with these big projects, that's great. Well, you lose one and now your income went down by 50%. So diversify your projects. If you've got 20 clients and one fires you or you have to fire one, then it's a minor bump in the road and you can keep cruising. So, but part of that is also, make sure you have necessary savings because there will be ups and downs. That is part and parcel to being in business. And if you're not ready for that, it can be enough to throw you. And you're like, all right, I can't handle it. I got to go back to work. And that is probably what throws most people because they like it when everybody likes it when if you're always the grasshopper, then you're going to be working for somebody after a while. So keep those in mind. Those are just little, ideas. So, and then the other thing, just about done here. So somebody comes to you, you're going to have this if you haven't already. I've got this great idea. And it shouldn't take very long. Oh. But I don't have any money. Do you want to be a partner? I just need you to build the entire web application. So you'll get presented with this opportunity at some point, especially as a one-man business. And so you need to think very carefully about those scenarios. And I've had a couple entered in with, one, the product didn't work, and that's okay, and we're still friends. We shut down the side business. And the other one I'm still involved with as a partner in a web property. So it's called Audible Yoga. And it was somebody who I had done some work with on a team. She was a designer. She and a partner had gotten together, come up with this idea, presented it to me. And this is one scenario that I decided to enter into the formal relationship with and put a lot of time and some personal money on the line. So the point is that this is a great opportunity if you work for yourself. Now, mind you, coming from this from a web consultancy, you're primarily building websites for other people. That's what I do. But then this is some of that diversification that Matt mentioned that you can often do. Matt runs a digital agency, but he also has a vertical product that he's heavily involved with. So hope you don't mind me sharing it. The idea being is that it's important to have some of these diversifications, and you will have opportunities will present themselves, and you need to be thoughtful about them. And there's 10 more talks of this length that could be covered about this topic. But just know that it's going to happen. Jump at the first opportunity, and it's another opportunity to learn, but it can be a more expensive opportunity or a more expensive lesson too. So, and then this is just the end of the talk because this is an opportunity to, one of the lessons I've learned along the way is hard bids suck, and they usually suck for the developer. And so, because there's always this. And so, anyway, so one of those lessons learned along the way, the hard way, is that I started my early career as kind of doing this as custom web development, and we kind of thought about it as, we take this organic iterative approach is the terminology we would use for early clients. And that concept has basically been codified as the agile development process. Because the idea being that you want when they show up, so how the heck can you bid something they don't know? And it's going to be, it could increase in size 4 times. And so I bill hourly for those services, and I try to give estimates when possible. But if you're up front talking about scope creep is going to happen, we don't really know what the final product's going to be. And that's an opportunity to help educate, be a consultant in this process, and help your clients learn as you learn what that project will be. So anyway, hopefully nobody went to sleep. Well, just JC. Okay. Oh, he's over there. Any questions or comments, experiences they want to share?
I was curious when you were talking earlier about the original setup of your company, beginning that branching out process. There's side things a lot of people don't realize need to do. I was curious, because I'm not that old. I don't think you're that old. I was, looking at things like some of these software as a service tools, like QuickBooks has their QuickBooks Online. And I honestly can't remember when some of those started to crop up. I was like, I used to know like, it's like, all right. But then along the way came like FreshBooks and other tools. And I was curious, did you use some things like that? Because I started my own little side company just really to just make more legitimate some like products I was working on. I used like Vivo to create an out escrow.
Yeah.
It's like I was wondering when you started up, that was around at the time. Or did you have to do everything the hard way?
Well, there were lots of books from the library, and LegalZoom wasn't around that I was aware of. QuickBooks was only a CD version, and that's kind of, I've just stuck with that because it works. But if I were to sort of redo it, I probably, in the end, the money you pay for you got to buy a new CD every 2 years or a new version of the service you would provide. So if I were to do it again, and other people I've talked to who have started, their own small businesses have utilized those sorts of services. So if I were to do it over, I would definitely look at QuickBooks Online, LegalZoom, and some of that. So there was definitely some stumbling blocks along the way. So
another point to, when you run a consultancy, time is basically what you have. And so you have to evaluate what your time is worth. That's where I'll determine the cost of softwares that'll help with certain aspects, whether it's, the accounting side or if it's outsourcing, help within a project, whatever it is. And I think at the end of the day, it's gonna take you longer to build an invoice in Word.
That's exactly, and that's something I didn't talk about, time's money.
Yeah,
And
time is
all of
money.
that junk that I threw up there is overhead that you can't go. So,
Right, so if
fine.
it's $30 a month to run a program that's gonna do all your invoicing, so you don't have to think about it. Think about that in $150 an hour you're charging. Are you gonna spend 5 hours doing that?
Right.
At your work or?
Absolutely. And those things that you should be thinking about as you go forward. So, yeah. That's great. I mean, the fact that I think that's the right path. If I had a product that I was developing, I mean, you create a new entity, right, to handle that. And it looks more professional, for sure.
I wonder, like you mentioned, started a new company, but forget all these things.
Yeah.
How do you clean that out?
Yeah, there was,
Lots of going to a government building and reading out forms and stuff.
I mean, my first business license in the state of Utah, I had to walk down there. Now, right, you can just do it online and be done. Yeah. Give me your check or write whatever you want. So it's definitely easier, and there's more information out there. So, but you still have to go point because you still have to go through the process. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for. Yeah.
How do you right-size your work where you stay a one-man band? Obviously, it sounds like you want to stay as one person.
Yeah, I've asked myself 100 times, like, hire employees? What do I do? I've gone through that process, but how do I right-size my work? Meaning, just keep it manageable.
Yeah.
The nice thing is, I have a wife who works full time, so it's a challenge. But that aside, that means I have a little more leeway. But it's that, man. Sometimes I have to work 60-hour weeks, and I hate it. And I end up, take a lot of time off, basically. But I have that flexibility, and that's part of the component of my goal was to have that flexibility. So, yeah, if you can figure out how to right size that work, like Matt was saying, bottle it, and
The network helps. You have too much on your plate and you lean on your friends or your network.
Yeah.
When you don't have enough, you let them know, hey, do you have anything?
That's a very good point. And I'll have even things that I can do. One of my biggest personal challenges is that I like to do it all myself, or try to do it all myself. And but even so, it's hard for the things that I can do to contract those out. But if you've got people in your network who are also contractors, or this is a great opportunity to lean on the moonlighters, and get them to help, right? Because just make sure you bill them properly to make sure you cover that. So I'll have a couple contractors do that, or if like maybe a project is like, well, I could do that, but I don't really want to. I'm too busy. And then you make your professional network happy. I send a lot of WordPress stuff to a friend that I made, a friend who's a professional in Eugene, Oregon, when I lived there for 5 years. He has his own one-man shop. So I send him work all the time. In return, he's like, I'm giving up my hosting business. I'm tired of dealing with it. I'm going to send all my hosting clients to you. And so that, which wasn't, it's not like 100 clients, but it just creates those really nice professional network and bonds that you can lean on each other. And so there are other people out there, so.
There's companies that specialize in it too. Like still here, but my talk is essentially about how our company has pretty much the majority of our businesses working for guys like you.
Yeah.
Just outsource it, so it's.
Right. There's plenty of those. There's plenty of that work that can be had. If you're like, I'm thin, who's the local site? having these conversations.
Oh, STG.
STG, right? They're basically just outsourcers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in the Drupal world. If that's your wheelhouse, there's definitely lots of opportunities there. So especially a lot of the big agencies, they get lots of leads and they don't want to deal with the small stuff. So realize I'm in a market niche, and so I'm not dealing with Fortune 500 companies because they have I can't do anything like that. So unless you're like a super specialist, right? But if you're just you're handling micro businesses, there's a lot of work in that. There's a lot of opportunities for achieving too. So anyway, thanks guys.
I'm curious if you try how you package up your